One of the most common questions that I get on YouTube is, how do I get a blurry background in video? Well, in this video, I'm going to be walking you through the basic changes that you need to make on your camera, a few investments that you may want to consider making for your camera if you're brand new, and how to actually make it look good when you put it all together. So let's dive right in. One of the most important things that I wish I had knew when I was first getting started in video is that getting a blurry background has nothing to do with the actual camera, but has everything to do with your actual lens. The reason why this is so important, because I was literally buying whole other cameras thinking that maybe this time it'll finally give me the blurry background, but that wasn't the case. You actually need a lens with a low aperture. It's important, if you're going to get a blurry background, to understand how an aperture works. An aperture, or also known as the f-stop, is what's going to give you the blurry background or not. You want to look for a lens that'll fit your camera, that'll go from an f2.0 or lower, especially if you're using an APS-C sensor camera. Now, you may not know what that is yet, but if you're using something like the Canon M50, Canon M6 Mark II, the Sony ZV-E10 or A6400, or the Sony A6600, any of those cameras are all APS-C sensor size cameras. So something like this Sigma 16mm lens that has an f1.4 aperture will work very well when you're trying to get a blurry background, especially if you're recording in a small space. Now, it's a couple characteristics or behaviors to understand when you're adjusting the aperture. The lower this number goes, it'll kind of start to look like a decimal, that 1.4. The brighter the image becomes on your camera screen, but also in your video file, and how blurry the background becomes. The lower that number is, the blurrier and brighter it is. The more that you increase that number, so if you popped on the kit lens on the ZV-E10, then you would notice that the image gets a whole lot darker and more of your background is in focus than at an f1.4 aperture. So the larger this number becomes, the more that you're going to see of everything behind you in focus, a deeper depth of field, and the darker the image becomes. So you'll need to adjust and compensate on your ISO to make up for some of those differences in the exposure or the brightness of your camera. And I'm going to show you this in real time. So right now I'm at f1.4. My ISO in my camera is set to 125, and that's giving me the look that you see right now. But if I'm going to make a deeper depth of field, then I would have that set to, let's say, something like an f4 that you may see on common vlogging lenses, but you'll notice that my exposure is way darker. It's too dark, in fact. So I'm gonna need to adjust my ISO to compensate for that. So let's jump this up to, say, about 1000 ISO, and that'll kind of get me to where I was at before. So you notice the difference, that not everything that's behind me is blurry, and that's not what I want. But this is where most of your kit lenses are. Thing with kit lenses that I also want to make you aware of is the more that you zoom in and out, if you're not set at an auto ISO, the more that you'll notice that your image goes brighter, darker, and things like that. And this tends to frustrate a lot of people because they can't figure out what settings are going to work well, because the more you zoom in and out, the more that aperture changes. And if you have your ISO set to auto, the more that the ISO changes as well. That's something to understand, and that's why you'll notice the higher price tag on other lenses as well. But to get that blurry famed background, we would need to drop that aperture, or that ISO, down to the lowest that it can get on any of your lenses. So for me, it's an f1.4, but now you notice we have the opposite. The image has gotten brighter. So I'm going to adjust on my camera and take me back to the 125 where I was at before, or even you can kick it to 160, but 125 will suffice. And you'll notice that now I have a blurry background, my image is better exposed, and I don't have to worry about anything in my video files adjusting because I'm using manual settings. So I want to show you how to change that real quick, because if you're not able to see any of the things that I'm showing you, you may be in an automatic setting on your camera. Now, if your camera doesn't have the button or like the digital dial like you would see on the ZV-1 or the Sony ZV-10, you most commonly will see that PASM or PASM kind of a dial. Now, when you look on your camera, you're looking for this specific dial here. You want to go to the camera icon setting. That's where you're going to find your manual exposure settings. Now, once you change that dial on your camera, then you may be asked a series of questions of what kind of exposure mode do you want to go into, especially as cameras are trying to add more beginner-friendly settings. I would encourage you to get out of those beginner-friendly settings or menu systems so that you can see when you're watching tutorials exactly what the creator is showing you, in addition to having the full range of everything that you want to see in the menu without it trying to kind of shelter you, but helping you out. It's honestly making things a bit more confusing if you ask me. Now, if you remember earlier in this video, I talked about why you would actually want to make sure your lens has the features that you need to give you the blurry background versus needing to pick any specific camera that'll do that. It's a lens thing, not a camera thing. But if you're using any of the Sony APS-C cameras, a6400, a66, ZV-E10, I'm actually going to share with you my favorite lenses that are best, I think, for video, that all of them, for the most part, minus one, will give you a nice blurry background. But if you're trying to figure out for live streaming how to maintain that regular video aesthetic, I want to share with you why Ecamm has been my live streaming program of choice for the last 4 years in a long-term review. Make sure you check it out. The video is also on the screen.